We've heard a lot of discussion about how Silicon Valley has gone all in for Trump 2.0, compared to the distance the tech bros kept during his first term. And it's not just Elon Musk. Meta's Mark Zuckerberg has made the pilgrimage and the pro-Trump changes to content checking. And now Joe Lonsdale, a billionaire Silicon Valley investor, tells Walter Isaacson why he thinks so many tech leaders are making this switch.
Silicon Valley is undergoing a dramatic shift. Top tech billionaires are turning their backs on their previous allies. Joe Lonsdale spills the shocking reasons behind this change. Get the full story and see why it's shaking the industry to its core. Check this video out.
Thank you, Chris John and Joe Lonsdale. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Good to be with you.
Let's talk about the big news this past week, which is Mark Zuckerberg deciding that Facebook is no longer going to moderate content. All of Meta is going to move away from that. Tell me, that's something you've been pushing for in terms of free speech. Tell me what you think of that and what the dangers might be.
You know, we've been talking about this for years. It's been a battle for the last 10 years, Walter, and this is a huge victory for the side of free speech. There's a big vibe shift with President Trump's victory, with Elon has been pushing really hard on this. You know, there's been a bunch of us pushing, but he's obviously the biggest champion. And it's great. Mark's basically given in and said, you know what, I was wrong. And people do not trust my censors anymore. We're going to completely redo it. We're going to follow Elon's lead. So this was a big debate in our society. And, it takes a lot of confidence to admit you lost and that what you were doing wasn't correct. And I have to laud Zuckerberg for that. Obviously, a lot of people are attacking him for only doing it after Trump won. But you know what? He said, this is the will of the people. I've lost the debate and I want to be trusted again. And I think that's a great thing.
Okay, but let's look at some of the potential downsides. Aren't there certain things, even, say, financial scams or crypto scams or drug scams or something? Don't those have to be weeded out?
I think there are definitely weird scams, illegal things, bad things people try to do. You definitely want to try to ban those accounts for doing scams, and I think X tries to do that as well. This is a very, very tough game to get right. I don't think Facebook ever got that fully right. I don't think X got that fully right. I don't think other websites have got that fully right. I think everyone's
Well, wait, tell me what you mean where X and Facebook haven't gotten it fully right.
I mean, you basically have these very complicated algorithms, right? So you have billions of posts, probably hundreds of billions of posts. I'm not in charge. It's a large number. And you have, no matter how many people you have, no matter how many algorithms you have, you're going to have to make some trade-offs, right? So even if you're saying you're going to allow free speech, you're going to have algorithms that stop child abuse material, right? No matter who you are, that's not acceptable. And you have to set these things somewhere. You're going to try to stop people who are posting spammy stuff all the time. You're trying to, any account caught doing a scam, you have to turn off. It's illegal, right? So you're still following the law. You're still doing your very best. So no matter what you're doing, it's actually quite a challenge. It's really fun for us to sit on the sidelines and criticize these guys and say, well, you're doing this wrong. It's really hard to be in charge of these platforms and actually get it right. And I'm not, I agree more with what Elon was doing than what Zuck was doing, but I know Zuck pretty well for a long time, and he would get attacked from the left. He would get attacked from the right. It's a hard thing to get these things right.
It's encouraging to see Zuckerberg finally admit to a shift. But how much trust can we place in these platforms when they've been failing us for so long? As Palantir supporters, we know how data can be both a tool for good and a weapon for bad. Do these algorithms, meant to ensure security and free speech, truly strike that balance? Or are we trading one form of control for another?
You've been a fighter, a crusader against the woke mind virus. First of all, I'd love you to explain exactly what you mean by that. But also, I've never seen, or rarely seen, a pendulum swing as fast as it has against that type of thinking. Do you worry that the pendulum may swing too far in some ways?
So, Walter, I'm worried that the pendulum is swinging culturally, but that we're not actually expunging these ideologies that have conquered our institutions. And so if you go around the country and you see what's happened, most of our university departments in the liberal arts, whether it's history or sociology or education or so many other areas, so many of these parts of our government institutions, so many of our NGOs were conquered by this woke mind virus, which is very focused on identity politics. It comes from a form of Marxism. It's very focused on cancel culture. It's very much against the U.S. and is very, very guilt-ridden. It's very driven by fear.
I've understood, the vibe shift in terms of the things that you talk about, such as identity politics. And I also weigh that against things that have been a problem in our society, including racism or the headwinds that somebody in New Orleans here, born black in the Ninth Ward, faces compared
100%.
to what you and I do. How do we make sure that we don't sort of lose a balance here?
No, 100%, Walter. And there was the truth is that there was an extraordinary racism that hurt a lot of communities. These communities are still damaged from racism that happened. As far as I could tell, I think the racism was much, much, much worse in the past. It doesn't mean there's not racism today, but I think it was much worse in the past. And all of us, should see that and should want people to make sure they have opportunity. At the same time, the answer to racism is not more racism. And I think that was a huge mistake our society's made the last 20 years. And I think it's actually increased a lot of racial animus in our country because we started doing things like DEI and like otherwise that actively discriminated against white men, that actively discriminated against people who are successful like Asians and others. And that's actually, if anything, like not only has attacked merit and broken a lot of things, which is terrible. Lots of things in our society are very broken, as we see from the fires going on this week in LA based on terrible policy, and as we see from all sorts of messes. But it's also actually created more racism and more problems for people. So I agree that we need to treat everyone right, and we need to not kind of swing away from helping people, but we do not need to keep doing this racism because that actually just breaks things more.
As we witness the cultural pendulum swinging, it's crucial that we don't just fight against harmful ideologies, but also ensure we don't replace them with new forms of division. The real challenge lies in creating systems that recognize everyone's struggles without resorting to more discrimination. True equality must transcend identity politics and focus on merit and opportunity for all.
Some of your friends in the tech world, obviously most Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and others, are part of this government efficiency, DOGE program, well named, I guess. And you've been involved with all of these people. What do you think is going to happen there, and what's the goal there?
Our government is the least efficient part of our society. There are literally trillions of dollars wasted on things you constantly see, Walter, when we tens of billions of dollars for something that never happens with electric charging infrastructure, hundreds of billions of dollars for a train that basically just pays money to lawyers but doesn't actually build much at all. The list goes on and on and on. There are so many parts of our society where the cost is going up because government's involved, and it's crushing the middle class, it's crushing the working class, and this is unnecessary. That we don't need this waste. And so what's going to happen there is they're going to go in and they're going to look at this. They're going to say, like, what parts of the bureaucracy are able to be more efficient? What parts of the bureaucracy have not been coming to work at all, frankly, for the last 5 or 6 years, and are just getting a paycheck while working on the side, which is a lot of people. And what things can we cut? And by the way, NGOs, non-government organizations, are nonprofits that get a lot of money from our government. A lot of them are radical ideologues. A lot of them are being paid to teach people to fake asylum. They're being paid to cause all sorts of messes in our cities. There's a lot of this stuff needs to be made accountable, needs to be turned off. And so a lot of us are really excited to go in there and actually apply merit, apply logic, just fix a lot of this broken stuff.
Are you going to be involved?
I have a lot of my really good friends involved, and I've passed them a bunch of ideas, and I'm publishing a bunch of ideas. And I'm going to keep having conversations with them. I have a full-time job running my venture capital firm, building companies here in the U.S., and we're starting a new university here. So I'm quite busy, but I'm really excited to be helping my friends because there's a lot to fix, and I'm really passionate about making government work for everyone.
If there's going to be great cuts in government spending of the order that's been talked about, it probably is going to have to come some from the Defense Department as well. And you are a co-founder of Palantir, which is trying to find both machine learning and new ways to do warfighting. Tell me how you think that's going to play out. Should we get rid of things like the F-35 plane? Should we have a new version of warfare? And will that save money?
Yeah, so defense is a huge area that could be a lot more efficient, Walter. There's really a battle going on in the background in defense. All these legacy companies merged to form what are called the primes in the 90s when the Cold War ended. And Palantir and SpaceX were the first two companies to break through, sort of become new primes since then. It was very difficult the way the laws were set up. We had to be very persistent. There's now multiple new ones coming up to compete, like Anduril, Saronic, Epirus, things like that. Just really cool new technology, far more advanced than the old primes. And there's a huge battle because these old primes have set things up to get paid cost plus. And so their incentives have been to make things 10 times more expensive than they need to be, and then make lots of rules.
Should we just get rid of?
The push for government efficiency is crucial. But when it comes to defense, how do we balance cutting costs with maintaining a strong military? Palantir's role in revolutionizing defense through data-driven insights could reshape the way we view national security. If we rethink warfare, Could it lead to both cost savings and more effective defense strategies?
Cost plus contracts?
I think there are very, very few areas where it makes sense. I think there's very, very specific commodity-like areas where it may make sense. But for anything innovative, for anything with software, cost plus does not make sense. And of course, it's more complicated. There's all sorts of other areas. Like between you and me, there's bases that are great for the economy of like local rural areas that clearly don't add to our defense. And so just like we have entitlements that are a form of welfare, certain parts of military spending, if we're honest, are a form of welfare. They're not actually about terrifying our enemies. They're about doing things to kind of help communities. And I think helping communities is great, but if we're going to have to cut back, we need to be reasonable. Which part of defense is scaring our enemies and is protecting America, and which part has some room maybe to cut because it's not actually doing the things defense is supposed to be doing. And these are tough conversations we will have to have at some point.
You talk about entitlements, and that's sort of the really big hunk of
it's 3.8. Yeah, 3.8 trillion of the 6.5 trillion is the entitlements.
And so can that be cut significantly without hurting people?
There's probably about $300 billion. So of the 3.8 trillion, like 0.3 of that trillion is probably fraud. There's a massive, massive amount of scams in Medicare and Medicaid. There's huge numbers of Chinese spy rings and other kinds of groups claiming things. There's Mexican cartels involved in this as well. There's all sorts of people illegally getting money for things. There's people who were found to be dead for years. Their kids are getting the money. I mean, and we have not applied anti-fraud. Like in business, Walter, when we were at PayPal, all sorts of other companies in Silicon Valley have gotten really, really good at understanding how fraud works and how clever people are to steal money. The government hasn't applied anything. 10 years ago, I talked to President Obama about this, and he agreed with me. He wanted to do it. His staff blocked it because they thought it would look bad if we spent time, showing off how much fraud there is. And so this fraud's only grown. So yes, we could definitely cut a huge amount of fraud if we let us, and I hope we could do it this time.
But fraud, even at best, is $300 billion, and you'll, chip away at it. Is there something more fundamental about entitlements that you think should be cut?
On the margin, there's things I think everyone agrees with. I'm not sure that millionaires should be getting unemployment insurance. If I were to lose my job, I'll make it. You don't need to give me unemployment insurance, which right now you would, and a lot of people, that actually costs us a lot of money per year. There's a lot of silly marginal things like that tied to entitlements that are easy to fix, along with the fraud. In terms of bigger cuts, there's so many other areas right now where I think we could save $500 billion to $1 trillion that I think this administration President Trump has said he's going to focus on areas other than core entitlements to fix right now. And so that's what we're going to do. And our job is to follow the president.
What about taking out regulations? To what extent, let's take healthcare, for example. To what extent could you have a significant impact with deregulation?
Yeah, the healthcare and regulation is one of my favorite areas. I'm glad you asked. I think everyone agrees you want to have enough rules to protect people. You don't want some kind of crazy Wild West here. At the same time, what happens in the regulatory state, Walter, is these things just agglomerate over time, where there's tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of rules. And who lobbies for the rules? It's the giant companies. It's United Healthcare's. It's the health systems who don't want competition. And so right now in America, we have all sorts of new technologies. For example, if someone has diabetes, there's a really good chance they get diabetic retinopathy, which makes them go blind. And it turns out, we have a company that with AI plus a nurse in any rural area could check that and could stop you from going blind. But there's all sorts of rules stopping people from paying for it because it's AI, stopping people from paying for it if a doctor's not present, and that makes it way more expensive. And so there's that times 10,000 where healthcare ends up just getting much more expensive because of all these captured crony rules, and there's tens of thousands of those. And so yes, I'm really excited to force that, to open it up, to let people compete with health systems in ways they don't want competition. But if we don't do that, the cost is going to keep going up. So yes, this is a huge issue for our country.
The inefficiencies in entitlement programs, particularly the massive amount of fraud in Medicare and Medicaid, are a real problem. By applying modern fraud detection tools, similar to those used in Silicon Valley, we could save a significant amount of taxpayer money. However, beyond fraud, we also need to reconsider which benefits are truly necessary, particularly for high earners.
Palantir has been at the forefront of using technology and machine learning for everything from military uses, government uses, intelligence uses. I was always struck by the fact that you all named it Palantir out of Lord of the Rings.
Indeed.
Which is a sort of a protection stone. But as you remember from the book, all of a sudden that can go wrong. The bad guys can get it.
That's the warning. That's the warning built in. Palantir in the book was built 2,000 years ago by these good elves partner with the good humans, and they cleaned the land of bad guys, and they had a golden age for a very long time. And what happens is eventually a bad guy gets in charge of the Palantir stones, and that causes obviously very serious problems. And that was actually explicitly one of the reasons we built Palantir. Wasn't just to stop the bad guys, which we did. We helped eliminate thousands of terrorists, and we helped prevent huge numbers of attacks. But what we were also trying to do is build into Palantir the audit trails and the frameworks to protect civil liberties, and to create, so no matter who uses it, people can go back and see how it was used. The people at the top can watch the watchers. And you know what? There's no perfect solution for humanity with power, Walter. If you figure it out, you let me know, because but by creating power for the good guys and trying to make it watch as much as possible, trying to let everyone know what the rules are, that's the best we could do, and it has done a lot of good. And all of us have to be wary of the power of government.
One of the big differences between the first Trump term and this upcoming Trump term is that this time around there's a whole lot of tech innovators, people like your friends and even yourself, who are going to be involved in it. How do you think that's going to make this upcoming term different than the first term, and what guardrails should there be with around all these ideas?
You know, Walter, it's funny because I think there's a lot of different ways of seeing things in the technology world, but to me maybe a little bit obnoxious for a second. The people who are building these technology companies in our generation, these are the most courageous people in our generation. These are the boldest people in our generation. These are people who are comfortable taking risks, putting themselves out there, in some cases failing before they succeeded. And that's a really important and healthy thing to have in leadership. When you have things as broken as they are in our government, when you have regularly tens of billions of dollars lit on fire, when you have massive failures in the Secret Service, massive failures in terms of what the FBI and others were focusing on, when you have terrorists being let in on our borders because things are being run so badly, you need bold people, you need competent people who are willing to change things aggressively. And so this is a really important time to go in and fix and change things. And I mean, we have some great leaders going in who have run big companies, who do know how to put boundaries in place and do know how to make things work. And I'm really excited to see them there.
The involvement of tech innovators in government is exciting, but how do we balance bold leadership with responsible oversight? These are individuals who've risked everything to create change in the tech world, but when applied to governance, how do we ensure that their drive for innovation doesn't inadvertently overstep crucial boundaries?
Well, as you know, Elon Musk talks about being a nation of risk takers, and that we have too many referees now and not enough risk takers.
That's great.
But on the other hand, he feels you need some guardrails. Are there going to be enough guardrails in the second Trump term?
Of course. And, listen, America is a great nation because of its frontier mindset, Walter. I mean, America has always had a frontier, whether the frontier is the West, whether the frontier is outer space. But that mindset of being able to try things and do things that fail is really important. And you always have a balance between entrepreneurship and guardrails. When I first did one of my first companies, I was on a call, I think it was American Express at the time, with the late CEO, and there were, I think, 22 lawyers on the call, and I was just blown away. Like, that's what happens when something gets to be too big. You get 22 lawyers to get anything done. It's comical, but it's how it works. And there probably shouldn't be 0 lawyers. There probably should be a few of them checking things over, but you probably don't want 22. And he's right. There's way too many referees. Does that mean we get rid of everything and just go crazy? No, but maybe Elon or I at 21, I wouldn't trust me at 21 doing this and running the country. I wouldn't trust him either at 21, because you're so entrepreneurial, you're on the extreme, and you're like, screw all the bureaucrats, screw all the lawyers, I don't want anything. But if you've built companies and you've run them and you're older and you've experienced this, it's a balance. You want to have some people who are checking things. You want to have some really strong entrepreneurial energy. And right now, our government's entirely lost an entrepreneurial side. It's entirely the team of the thousands of lawyers, and we need to balance that out. And so this is a great direction we're going right now.
It's clear that the spirit of risk-taking and entrepreneurship is a core part of what made America great. But when you consider how the tech space has evolved, especially with companies like Palantir, you have to ask, are we really allowing innovation to thrive in government, or is it constantly bogged down by bureaucratic red tape? Palantir's approach to data analytics, helping the government be more efficient, shows that when the system doesn't hold back innovators, we can achieve great things. If we're not careful, the constant rise of referees and lawyers in the regulatory process will prevent us from moving forward. Wouldn't it be better to prioritize efficient solutions over maintaining an endless, complex web of regulations that do little to push the country forward?